What's up, and welcome to Clarity for Parents of Athletes, bringing you stories from professional athletes about their parents and how they were raised. My name is Gabe Nosair from aclearmind.com. All right, and welcome to episode number 30. This is a big one for me since my guest is one of the most iconic U.S. men's soccer players in history. And I'll get to more about him in just a minute, but I wanted to take this moment to thank you for listening to this podcast and ask that you rate the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on, and also write a review on Apple Podcast so that more people can benefit from what these athletes are saying. Whenever you write a review, it makes the podcast a little more visible. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that. Just scroll down when you get to Clarity for Parents of Athletes on your Apple Podcast app, and you'll see where you can write a review. So, of course, also please share the podcast with others as well to make their parenting even better when it comes to raising their athlete and even just really enjoying life in general. There's so many great points from these athletes that anyone with or without children can really benefit from. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the guest for this episode is one of the most iconic U.S. men's soccer players in history. Cobi Jones played in the 1994, 98, and 2002 World Cups for the U.S. He is the all-time leader in caps for the U.S. men's national soccer team with 164 appearances from 1992 until he retired from international play in 2004. His club career started in England with Coventry City, then he went to my home country of Brazil and played with Vasco da Gama, a Rio club, and then ultimately came back to his hometown of Los Angeles, played for the Galaxy from their first year in the MLS, or really the first year the MLS existed at all in 1996 until he retired in 2007. In this interview, Cobi lets us into his family life, including his days as a youth soccer player and how his parents supported him during his athletic journey. And he also takes us through his college days at UCLA and how he made that team as a walk-on, which was something that I didn't know about until this interview. And he also talks about his approach to parenting his two sons during their athletic journeys and what sports they play. And of course, he has advice for other parents out there who are raising their own athletes. In this interview, I also introduce what I call lightning round questions, which the answers were a little longer than lightning, but it was really, really cool to hear a little bit more about Cobi in depth. And I asked questions like who the best player he ever played against was and the most difficult stadium for him to play in and what his dream job would be if he never played soccer professionally. So I'd love to hear what you think about this episode and all my episodes. You can always contact me at Gabe, Gabe, at aclearmind.com, or go to my website, aclearmind.com, and you can sign up to be in my community. So as always, please stay tuned to the end of the interview, and I'll give you my takeaways where I delve in a little bit deeper into some things that Cobi said during the interview that really resonated with me. All right, enjoy. All right, Cobi Jones, thanks so much for being here. How's it going out there today in LA?
It's going pretty well. It's nice. It's 72 degrees and sunny. Typical, right?
Oh, yeah, that's nice. That's good for you. It's snowing here in Albuquerque. There was, very, very little snow accumulation on the ground today over here, and we had like a 2-hour delay for my son's school. So, I'm feeling your warm weather, and I'm bringing it over here. So I appreciate you sending it. So I appreciate your time today. I've really watched you over the years. For me, I think there are two major turning points in U.S. soccer history. One is, for me, the 94 World Cup, when it changed, and then when MLS started. And you came in at that time in your peak, but you started playing soccer at a time in the U.S. when it wasn't really like the sport to go to. So how did you get into soccer? And where did you grow up? Who introduced it to you? I'll let you take it away from there.
Right. Well, I was part of the, that initial boom of soccer in the 70s, where almost every kid in the neighborhood was just thrown into soccer with AYSO and one of the routes for parents to get the kids out of the house and just, and play as much as possible. For me, it was one of those things where I was in the back seat of my parents' station wagon, and we were driving down the hill by the park, and I looked over and I saw my cousin. He was a year older than me, and I saw him. He was in the park playing soccer. So it was one of those things where typical, 5-year-old kid in the back, start screaming at my parents, "Hey, there's Corey, there's Corey. I want to go play with him. I want to go play with him." That always happens, So my parents, they decided, hey, why not? So they pulled over, went over to the park, and went out, asked the coach and said, "Hey, can Cobi join in with his cousin on the team?" Coach said, "Sure, why not? You can join. He can join in." Gave me a jersey, and I went out there and I started kicking the ball around. That's my initial introduction, to the sport. Was thankful to my cousin, to be quite honest, that he was playing in it, and it kind of went from there. I mean, the story kind of touches on a couple of things, right? So different than today is, well, number one, I was, back of the station wagon looking out backwards with no seatbelt on, first and foremost.
Yeah.
And,
don't do that these days.
Yeah. That's actually, parents will get in trouble with that these days. Secondly, the fact that, the coach is just like, yeah, gave me a jersey and I'm going out and playing. My parents didn't have to sign like 1,000 forms, and it was a different world and at a different time. But, I think a little bit's lost nowadays with all the structure, of the game. But, it was, that was the moment, that kind of just, started everything.
And was it love at first touch of the ball?
I think so. I don't particularly remember just like saying, I love the sport, but I know I thought it was fun, and that's what it was all about. I was a kid. There's a few types of kids, the ones that stand out, you can separate kids in the ones that like to be very methodic and, kind of figuring things out. And I usually tend those are more towards, okay, I can sit down and they can play baseball and they can, figure out all the little minutia and the details there. That wasn't me. I was more like, I just want to run, I want to kick, and I want to run some more. That's why the sports I did growing up, it was track and soccer. Those are the ones I loved. My dad pushed me into other ones that I truly didn't enjoy, and have a little resentment, but for me, it was always soccer and track.
Nice. So I'm glad you mentioned a little bit of your family history, because this is a podcast for parents of athletes. So what sports did your dad push you in, and what were the sports that he did growing up?
Hey, well, my dad, he grew up in Mobile, Alabama, in the South, in the in the 30s, 40s, 50s, all that. So a very different world. But the sports, he's seen it all. My parents saw it all. For him, what he participated in his sports of love were, as a kid, he played basketball, but he loved tennis. That's the one sport that he played all the time. So the sports that he kind of pushed me into were tennis. Like he had me taking lessons and, those types of things. But then he kind of, the resentment and the forceful nature from him is when he forced me to play baseball, that just was not my sport. It was, for me, a little too slow. I was the kid that they said, just stand up at the, plate and take a ball, take a few balls and try to get walked because I was smaller, and then I was out in the outfield, so it's just not enough activity for a kid like me that had a lot of high energy.
Yeah, you need to move, man. I remember your pace, that's for sure. Why, if your dad was more of a tennis guy and didn't seem like he was a baseball guy from what you said, why did he push you into baseball?
I think he wanted me to try, everything, and participate in all the different sports. That's great. And I now, as I'm a dad, I agree with that. I think it's good to at least test them out. But, as a kid, you're just like, you have something that you love. You don't want to be, distracted from it or kind of pulled away from it at all. So for me as a kid, I was kind of like, I'll do it. I don't enjoy it, and thankfully I only had to do it that one season and then I was done.
Oh. Nice. And what about your mom? What were her sports, if she did any?
Nah, mom didn't do any sports. She was more of the high society gal, from way back
Oh,
when in the
nice.
South. So yeah, she didn't do a whole lot of sports. She participated in clubs and activities and those types of things rather than doing sports. It's a very very different world. I don't want to say it now where it's like oh girls didn't do sports back then. But in
Right.
reality, for the most part, it was a different cultural time, different cultural area, where it wasn't really looked upon in a positive light, for her to be doing sports.
Wow. Yeah, I could see that, especially with so much repression in the South. Well, was she from the South?
Yeah, yeah, both they came up from a town that split down. Shouldn't say the town. The town split by the train tracks. You're from the right side or the wrong side. My mom was from Mobile, Alabama.
Mm.
My dad was from Pritchard. Dad was from the wrong side of the tracks. My mom was from the nice side. So
Wow.
it's like the old story.
So how did
Yeah.
they connect?
Oh, parents are. I get 15 different stories all the time, but apparently, like my mom was in the same like club as one of my dad's sisters,
Oh, okay.
and that's how they kind of ran into each other and connected.
That's awesome. So it seemed like you were kind of miserable playing baseball and tennis. Did your mom see that, and did she try and support you through that time?
Um, my mom supported me in everything, anything and everything. I can't say I was miserable in tennis. I liked tennis. That was more of just like taking the lessons and anything like that. I wasn't pushed to like play it competitively.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have any kind of resentment there. It was the baseball, because I felt like the baseball was taking away, because it was at the same time as my track season. So I couldn't run track that year. So I was angry that I was missing out on track, and playing baseball. But after that, they realized that wasn't for me, and so I did the one season and I was done, and I got to go back in and play.
Mm.
And yes, mom supported in everything.
That's awesome. Were you vocal to your parents or to your dad, especially about your feelings about baseball and missing out on track?
Well, I was vocal at the beginning of, I don't want to do it, but I was pushed in it anyways.
Uh-huh.
I had to do it, and I came from a family where you can let your disapproval be known, but it's not going to matter, and you don't continue with disapproval towards your parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
at all. So I went out and I did it, and I did it to the best of my abilities. And I admit I was not good at it. I could give on the playground and all that stuff. I was good at, throwing the ball, hitting the ball and stuff, but that's completely different than when you're playing with kids that are competitive,
Uh-huh.
and they're living and dying and breathing it, and they get all the little details of, throw the ball this way, all the different rules, what you can and can't do. I wasn't interested in it. So I didn't really go deep into the rules. And when you don't do that about any sport, you can't fall in love with it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's the biggest factor in any success in anything, really, is you have to love what you're doing.
Very true.
So you got into soccer, and you said you started at AYSO, which typically is known as a less competitive situation. But when you started, what was it like for you? Was it competitive, more recreational?
Yeah. Well, let's remember, when I started, that's pretty much all there was AOISF. Club was just really trying to start. There was no development academies or anything like that. So you're not talking about like, oh, you got to play here because it's the right team, or when I grew up, you played on the team, be it club or AYSO, you played on the team that was near you. You weren't traveling 10 miles. If I had told my parents what I hear about the stories today, oh, we're traveling an hour to get on the right team, my parents would have said, you're not playing that sport. That's it. You're playing what's right here in your neighborhood. You can forget about that. And I will continue to argue. I think that sometimes that's the best thing, because you need to learn a variety of different things. Because you don't always want to be on the best team. Sometimes you want to be on a team that's not so good, so you can be a player that learns how to lose, learns how to win, learns how to make your team better, learns how to make your teammates better, yourself better, and find ways to win games that you shouldn't. If you're always going to the best team, you're getting an easy route where your team's always winning, and you think that's the norm. That's not the norm, and it's not going to help you when you have to deal with those losses in the sport or in life, in the future. So that's about my viewpoint, on all of that.
Yeah, you can definitely learn more from losing than you ever can from winning, in my opinion, as well. There's a lot of conflictual opinions about playing competitive games and having scores and leagues and standings at a young age. What's your opinion? Is it all right to start young? Should they wait till a certain age? And if so, what's that age?
I think you should start from the beginning. It should always be known. I think there's a big mistake out there that parents now, where we tend to think that, to be quite honest, that kids are dumb. Just because they're young doesn't mean that they're dumb. They know when they've lost a game. They know when they've won a game, and they can keep count in their own head, of what's going on. There's this thought that like, oh, we just won't keep score and that makes everything fine. No, that's not it. Your kid's going to know. They're going to know who's winning. They're going to know who's losing. They're going to know who's the better team. They'll just look at it in a different way. Don't think that the kids are stupid, and then there's the whole other factor that there's lessons to be learned in every aspect of the game. Now, the question is, are you willing to teach those lessons? Are you just going to kind of comfort the kid all the time and think, okay, everything's fine, and keep them, secluded and away from winning and losing? Or can you take those situations and make learning lessons from everyone? If it's winning, if their team is winning, it's like, okay, how do you continue to win? What did you do right? What can you do better? How can you be a good winner? How can you interact with the opponent that is losing? Those are all things. If you're a team that's on the losing side of it, it's like, how do you react when you've lost? How do you get better and not lose the next game? These are important things. It's motivation. I think that's one of the things that we have to make sure that kids have is motivation. You don't want to have it where everything is just like, oh, it doesn't matter. Then where's the motivation for the kid to get better at the sport? If it's, there's a way where you can have the scores out there. Yes, okay, if it's getting like 15-0, okay, you can just stop kind of thinking of what the score is about. But there's lessons to be learned in like, okay, well, we lost really bad. This is how we're going to improve. And then in the next game, if they're learning the lessons and doing the right thing, they'll see if there's improvement or not. That's important. If you just leave it out there where we're not going to have scores at all, there's just such a lack of motivation, because the kids in the end, even though they're putting it in their head, they're seeing the parents just being like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's okay. So then, don't get mad at your kid when, the balls are, players are running by them and you say like, why aren't you trying? Well, they're thinking, well, it doesn't matter. They see the parents like, oh, the scores don't matter. Nothing matters. So don't get angry. There's a lot of different ways to look at it, but this is my opinion on, you've got to get kids motivated and competing at a young age, and teach them the lessons from it. Don't think that it's just all, if you lose, that it's just all negative. No, there's positive lessons that you can take from everything.
On the other side of that, trying to teach kids to be competitive, sometimes the parents, then they get overly competitive, and that brings them in to the child's world on the field. So where is that sweet spot? There's always a sweet spot in something and saying, okay, we need to be competitive, but we also want it still to be about the children and keeping the parents at bay. What do you think the best way to do that is?
Well, I think, look, there's obviously a sweet spot. That's a good way. You want your kids to be competitive, but I think you said it, is when the parents start becoming competitive, that's the issue. They're not in the game. When you start seeing parents screaming and yelling, that's an issue. You can cheer and you can be helpful. You can even, cajole a little bit to say, hey, come on, let's be a little bit more aggressive, be a little bit better at this. But once you start seeing them getting upset and angry, like you see professional athletes on the field, then you know that there's an issue there. They've translated whatever's going on with their kids into like their issues and trying to put it out on the field and exposing everybody to it, exposing other parents, exposing the kids on both teams, exposing, kids that are watching the game. That's ridiculous. That's too much. And as I've said, kids aren't stupid. Adults aren't stupid too. We all pretty much have a general sense of when parents are going too far. Everyone knows there's always that one parent that's like screaming and yelling, and all the other parents get quiet because it's just like, geez, what's his problem? Or what's her problem? That there's a general idea and a general sense that there's an issue there. We don't have to be like, oh, we've got to market. This is the point, and this is exactly what you have to do. No, we all kind of know, and it's about parents not taking on the issues on the field to themselves and whatever their individual issues are. And look, I've been a part of a lot of teams when I was growing up where parents were, red carded, kicked off the field, going outside the gate and screaming and yelling outside the gate, So it's happened, from time immemorial. It's happened from way back when, and it's going to continue in the future. But the best thing is that what we can hope for is that, we can hope that we're not on a team with a parent like that. In general, I think it's got to be a rule of thumb of the team kind of coming together to every parent saying, hey, we've got to kind of control our tempers.
So, that was kind of leading to my next question. Say we are on a team with one parent or maybe more than one parent who's like that. Whose responsibility is it to educate that parent or to try and, I guess, inform that parent like, hey, you're probably pushing a little bit too much, which can be a really uncomfortable conversation to have? Whose responsibility is it?
Well, it's the individual parent's responsibility first, then it's the spouse or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, and then it's got to be another parent. If it's preferably the coach, stepping up, saying, hey, this is the team situation. You're making the team uncomfortable. You're making the rest of the parents uncomfortable. You've got to settle down on the sidelines. If you can't do that, it'd be preferable if you aren't coming to the games, or you are separating yourself from the group.
Yeah. And I think worst case scenario is the player gets cut just because of the parent. That can be really devastating on so many different levels for that child.
You see, I think that's a mistake. I don't think a coach should ever cut a player because of the parent. That there's got to be 100 different ways to deal with it before you cut a player because of the parent's issues. You don't judge the player or affect the player because of the parent. That's for me, that's unacceptable. There's got to be something that can be, or many things that can be done before that.
Yeah, that's definitely a worst case scenario, but sometimes it can affect a whole team. What were your parents like in a sport that it sounds like they didn't grow up playing and you were really getting highly involved in this? What was their involvement like during your soccer career as a youth?
My parents, basically, I look back now and realize that they were basically a taxi service. Kind of getting me to different games and different tournaments, and different weekend tournaments. And to be quite honest, look, it wasn't always negative for them. I look back and understand what was going on, after hours, when we'd go to these little hotels and they'd have like the pool outside and, all the kids are put to bed and like everyone go inside, the parents are going to hang out by the pool for a bit, and they're obviously out there having a few drinks and chatting and laughing it up, So they were having a good time on the weekends, it's like little getaways for them. But, I went to a lot of tournaments over the years, and I'm thankful for them for that because, now with my own kids, I look at like how difficult, that is to do, to give up your weekend to go to these different tournaments, all over the state, sometimes all over the country.
Yeah, so you have two sons now, and you told me your younger one is playing. What's I can imagine as somebody who's played at a really high level, such as yourself, the highest level in this country, to be there as just a dad. Got to have some restraint on your part, I imagine. So, what's your experience like as a dad now, a soccer dad?
It's interesting. I think I'm pretty, I guess, understanding of the situation. Look, my 9-year-old doesn't play. He played to begin with, but didn't find his way in it. Doesn't like the sport. So I said, okay, then you don't have to do it. He likes basketball, so he's playing basketball. Though my only issue is that he has to do something. He has to play some type of sport. My youngest, he likes soccer and basketball, so he's playing the sport and he likes it. He loves it. I understand that there's a big difference for a professional and a 6-year-old. So as I've coached professionals, I can understand where it's like you can explain it and stuff like that. Coaching 6-year-olds, it's like herding cats. So I have the most respect in the world for these coaches that go out there and do that. Like, I've done a ton of clinics and appearances over the years where I've had, over 50 kids to myself, trying to deal with them and wrangle them up. So
wow.
I respect these coaches, and they always say, oh, you should come out and do this, or, oh, don't get mad at me if I do something wrong. And I'm just literally sitting there just going, I know the pain that this is. I'm trying to teach a 5 and 6-year-old all the basics of the game. I don't think that I would have the patience for it. I could do a little bit here and there with my kid, but, number one, kids don't like to listen to their own parents. Number
right.
two, just young kids, their attention span, they're always over. Half of the time you're wrangling. It's difficult. So I, at this age, I'm just like, hey, coaches, good job. Go for it. I sit back, if I'm asked anything, I will definitely help and put my opinion in. But, I am not one to criticize anyone that's willing to go out and coach 5, 6, 7-year-olds.
Yeah. You have to keep them moving. Keep them moving, keep them engaged. And short activities, and a lot of them, So what do you look for? Yeah. What do you look for in a coach for your child? What are some important traits that when you're observing a coach, you're like, I want my child to play for that coach?
It's funny. You want a coach that's active and that truly enjoys the game and teaching the game, and that's important. If it's a coach look, I don't want a coach that is, oh, I'm just doing this as a parent volunteer because, my kid's got to do it. I really don't know anything about the game. I'm just out here, and kick the ball around. No, I want someone that knows the game, that's played the game, that likes the game, and that has a passion for the game. And if they're willing to coach the kids and share that passion, that's important for me, because that will kind of inspire my kids and give them a little bit of joy playing the game. And that's the most important thing, that they actually learn about the game and enjoy that learning process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that enjoyment's huge, and like I said earlier, really you have to fall in love.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go for it.
Can I say something?
Of course.
You notice that I did not mention about having a coach that wins, or
Very
being
true.
super competitive at that age. That's not what it's about. It's about them learning the game and having fun doing it. If they do that competitiveness and being good at the game, that they'll learn that over time. That will come into it. But just you don't need the, like, oh, you got to win at the young age. I don't agree with it. Yes, you want to keep scores and understand that, but it doesn't matter, because you can teach all the different things, within the winning and the losing. It's about them having fun and learning from that coach.
Mm. Absolutely. Yeah. That foundation has to be the enjoyment you're talking about, or really creating a love for something. And it's the same at school. When we have meetings with our teachers, we don't care about our son's grades. We care about the fact that he's learning to love. And every athlete that I've spoken to has a deep, deep love for the sport that they played. And I'm sure the same went for you. And they've also, a lot of them have told me about specific moments where they fell into that deep love for soccer, whatever they played. Do you have a memory of any kind of thing that triggered you into being like, I love this and this is what I'm going to do for my profession for the rest of my life, or as much as my life as possible?
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because it's a little bit different for soccer during my time because there was no professional league, here.
Yeah.
So I always had to think, okay, I'm doing this for fun, but what am I really going to do for a living? That
Right.
was, when you're in the high school years, it's just like, oh, you're just playing it for fun. That's what it's all about. And there's a few different moments and, where I loved the sport. And I remember one where I was a kid and, I just remember basically running the whole length of the field in all stars and getting a goal, and beating everyone, and that was just me running the whole field and scoring and just having the joy of being like free and open, that was a good one. When I was older in high school, it was a moment of connecting with the ball. I always used to try to, just try to hit the ball as hard as I could and just slam it. And I remember being in a training session with, funny enough, Eric Winalda and Eric Winalda's dad. And he was kind of coaching us in the training and he stopped me and pulled me over. It's like, no, you don't need to just push through the ball and try to, hit it as hard as you can. So it's all about the connection. And it might've been just one of those moments and stuff, whatever. The next ball that came out, I just tried to connect and it was like one of those perfect hits where it sounds brilliant, comes off the foot just right and goes into the upper V. And they just started, Eric and his dad started laughing, and I was just like, yes, and they're like, that's it. And, that was one of those moments, another moment where I was like, there's something. I just learned something important about the game, and learning something like that really, made me fall in love with the game again.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's about that connection. And again, you didn't state, a lot of athletes will say, oh, it was this game, or I watched this game, or this player do something. For you, it was about learning and loving just to learn and to improve. That just shows the depth right there to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from my parents' background. My dad has a PhD in chemistry. My mom was an English teacher. It's always been about learning. Always continuously learning stuff.
Wow. That's a deep academic background there. Wow.
Yes, indeed.
It's amazing.
And I think they're still, they always wanted me to go back to school and finish up to get my degree since I left early for the Olympics, So I still got a year left for UCLA.
Yeah. Well, it's never too late to go back. And they've got online stuff, I'm sure, too. You could do from wherever, the beach, anywhere.
Yeah, I'm in the process now of talking to them. So
that's awesome. So, you mentioned, I guess, academics must have been really high priority for your parents. What were some other traits that were really important as they tried to raise you? What were some things that you remembered from them?
Always to finish what you start. I mean, that's a simple way of putting it, but they would never let me quit something. That was very important to them, that you've got to continue to push through. Always understand that there's going to be, that there's going to be obstacles, forces, people in your way. And you've got to find a way to navigate that, push through, go around, whatever, to get to the goals that you want. It's a whole lot of that attitude of not giving up. And I think a lot of it is based off of their upbringing and everything that they went through. Obviously in, segregation South, they had a lot of issues that they had to deal with. And so they instilled upon me, that never say die, that never give up attitude. My mom always used to quote, one of my, one of the track lines that they had when I would get awards in track and stuff. It's beat your best. It's like, don't settle for your top goal at the moment. Continue to try to push on, and push beyond. So it was always about beating your best, kind of always doing a little bit more, kind of like we said, always learning a little bit more, always doing a little bit more.
That's awesome. So your parents were, during your youth journey, were chilling in the pool on weekends, hanging out with the other parents, enjoying their time. And then your time for college recruiting came up, how did they support you during that process? And what was your process like then? Because it's completely different the way it is today.
Well, first off, I wasn't recruited to college. I was a walk-on at UCLA.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there was no college recruiting for me. It was after high school, like, was it your junior year when you had to get all the applications out? It was my mom, helping me with essays, and, her being an English teacher, that was helpful. Helping me with essays and stuff that I had to write and send out to the different universities. And they were, my mom was a big advocate of applying everywhere. She was like that saying, you shoot for the stars and you see what you hit on the way down. So I applied everywhere within the UC system, and I think I did a flyer at Harvard, as well. And I ended up making the interview stage at Harvard. Went through that, but for the UC system, I got accepted, to all the schools that I applied to. I got accepted to all of them, which was fantastic. And for me, the big decision was really with my mom, discussing what was better suited for me. And she was good about that. She had 4 boys, 3 older brothers, and they'd gone through these processes before. And for me, it was, UCLA, it was between just thinking about Cal or UCLA, to be quite honest, but UCLA seemed to be the better choice for me. Went down there, did the walk-on situation at UCLA, and fortunately ended up, going through that preseason and making the team.
So how did you get on as a walk-on? What were the steps that you took?
Well, it was dealing with the coach, there, Ziggy Smith and Dean Wurzberger were the coaches at the time, and they said, yeah, you can come out and walk on and try out, for the team. And it's all about trying to get through the whole, the many people that walked on and through that preseason process. So I had to make sure that I was in shape, I was ready to go, and try to, take advantage of the situation at hand. It wasn't the easiest, to be quite honest. You had my year, UCLA had, like, I guess, the best recruiting class in the United States. They had like 5 of the top picks, of players that were supposed to be, the elite of within the United States. And it was always interesting. I really didn't know a whole lot about like the U20 teams, U18 teams. The farthest I had ever gone was like a district team, and I had gotten cut, a couple of times. So it was something that I didn't know about. So for me, it was just like a consistent battle of trying to prove myself that I was able and could hang with, the rest of these guys.
Mm-hmm. So usually when you're trying to walk onto something has to stick out for the coach to be like, okay, yeah, let's take a deeper look at that guy. What do you think it was for you that attracted yourself to the coaches?
3 things. The simple one, my speed, right off the bat. I would say my work ethic, that I was willing to always, work hard. And then third, my competitiveness. That's one thing that, most of the other things kind of go to the wayside, but work ethic and competitiveness, that's still there to this day. I compete in anything and everything that I do.
So you had a pretty good career at UCLA, went on to play professionally, including in Brazil. And I was actually born in Brazil, and my family is a big Flamengo, our family club.
Yeah.
So, and you played for Vasco da Gama. What was your experience like in Brazil?
Yeah, Vascaíno. Well, after, UCLA and the Olympics and all that stuff, the national team ended up spending some time down in Brazil. That was fantastic. That was absolutely great. I loved it. It was just like it was a different style, because I had gone to England first, You know, and it was a very workman-like mentality in England. Like, it's like you get out, you do your job, you work hard, you get after it day in, day out, you know, and then you get to Brazil, and it was such a different, you know, mentality where like it's the beautiful game. Oh, we'll get to it. Yes, when you're on the field, you work hard, you get everything done, but it's a joy to be here, you know, and being in Vasco, and I was living in you know, obviously, you know, Rio and on Copacabana Beach, you know, it's such a different lifestyle, you know, and I just remember that I would have, you know, they had a taxi picking me up every day. And I remember sometimes like a training was supposed to be at like 10 o'clock all the time. And sometimes I get there at 10 and, you know, trainings would start at 11. And I'm like, what is going on here? You know, I'm used to this, you know, this English style where it's like, you know, on time's late. You're there 15, 20, you're like there 45 minutes before, you know, all that type of stuff. And I would get there and I'd be sitting around for 2 hours, you know, before practice starts. You know, so it was very, very different. But it was fantastic. What I did love is how, living in Rio, that at Vasco, football was part of everything in society, hand in hand with the beach. You know, it was like the beach is part of everything. Football was part of everything. And I love how it came to a head when you go to Copacabana Beach, they're playing the football. You know, it was great. Guys are on the computers in their Speedos, you know, doing work. And then, oh, it's my turn. Okay. Then they go in, you know, and then they're playing football for an hour. And then they go back when they're out and they're on their computers. It was a different world, a completely different world. But I loved every minute of it.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, it's you spoke it perfectly right there. It's a different world, and the people are so full of joy and love, and that's how they approach life, and it's just so freeing and really it's enjoyable when anytime you're in Brazil, you know.
Yes, it is.
It's awesome. So, you know, a couple of things, you know, when I was cyber stalking you, for a good reason, of course, you know, I was looking at your stats in your 98 season with LA Galaxy. You had 19 goals. It seemed like that was the best year statistically in your career. What was special about that season? What was your mentality going into that season, and what do you attribute your success to?
You know, it's funny. It's all my best seasons seem to be like the World Cup years. You know, that's always, you know, you get that little extra motivation. 98 was a time where, you know, you're 28, 27, 28-year-old, you're in your prime. For me, you know, I was doing all the extra little things. I was doing the extra workouts. I would get up early. I was doing a certain diet, you know, before, this is a time before everyone was really focusing on diets and stuff. I was doing, you know, the balancing out the protein, carbs, and fats and all this stuff where I just took care of every aspect of my body. I was doing workouts before training. I was after games, you know, even when we were on the road, I was getting up early before the bus and just doing little workouts and stretches and cool downs and different things to make sure that my body was in peak performance. And, you know, so it kind of bled over into the team a little bit, and the others kind of followed along. We had a fantastic group that just loved being with each other and playing the game. Welton was my cohort, you know, up top. You know, I was in a little bit of a different position as I was a striker with Welton. And I think it was always interesting when people ask me about this here. I always talk about, we had confidence like no other. You know, we didn't think about that we could possibly lose a game. We would be on like the team bus, you know, as we're going to the game. And the question was always like between me and Welton. And I'll tell you this, and we were literally talking and betting. Players were betting, going, who's going to score first? $5 on Cobi, $5 on Welton. Now pay attention to that. It wasn't if we were going to score. It was like, who's going to score first? You know, that's a pretty solid type of view of yourself and the team and everything, where we just went, you know, we went in a good way all the way around. And the funny thing is, people don't know this, you know, about that team. And when we lost in the playoffs, our coach, you know, and I'm still bitter about this today, the night before the game, started talking to players about how we're going to play different and switched up the lineups and changed things up. And that's when we got smacked. He switched it up, and the players got angry, players got pissed, players are up all night, angry, players are going to the coach in the middle of the night. Our coach during the game, he wasn't on the sidelines. Like when the game was starting, he wasn't around. He was caught up doing other stuff with fans and stuff. It was like he got too caught up in stuff where to this day, us as players, when we talk about that, we're just like, what was he thinking? He thought it was a coach that thought it was all about him. And of course he does it at the wrong time. But it's like, why don't they just wait until it's all over? Then you can say, oh yeah, it was me. Don't try to start making moves and changes in the playoffs. We were just like, what are you doing? No, we can't do so it really threw everything sideways. But it was a tight group of guys, that really got along, throughout the whole time, where everybody was a friend.
Wow. You had chemistry. That's important.
Chemistry, without a doubt.
Yeah. Oh man, that kills me to hear about your coach. And that's something when I work with individual athletes and when I do workshops with teams and other groups, is that a big part of our experience is all based on our thinking. And our thinking can come from a place of positivity and essentially love, or it can come from our ego. And our ego always has this idea of fear. And it seems like your coach started to come with this fear, like, what if we don't win with this team? And said, now what can I do? And he got wrapped up in his thinking and said, all right, we need to make all these changes because maybe they know what we're going to do already, when essentially it sounded like he had the perfect mixture with your team already and should have just let you go at it.
Yeah, just let them play.
Wow. All right, so typically in my interviews, I just go with the flow of things and the conversation, which we've done up to this point, but I do want to introduce a lightning round for this episode, and I would invite you to be my guinea pig if you're open for that.
Sure. Yeah, not a problem.
All right. They can be short and sweet answers, or if you want to go into a little bit more detail, it's up to you as well. So Here we go. Best team that you ever played against.
Ooh, best team that I ever played against. I'd have, man, are you talking national team or club team?
Any team you want.
Okay. I always think that there was a team, the most difficult team. I'd have to say Brazil '94 World Cup. That's with Romario and Bebeto.
Yeah, that was the 1-0 July 4th game.
Right? Yep. We were even up a man, and we still couldn't.
Yeah.
They still controlled the game. Wow.
Yeah, that was a special team, I remember. But you guys did amazing. The whole country was behind you in that one. It was awesome. All right, best player you ever played against in your career?
Best player? I played against Ronaldinho. He was one of the most talented players when he was young. I think he was like 19, 20, stuff like that, when he was playing for Brazil. We were in a tournament in Mexico.
Wow. Toughest stadium to play in?
I would say Azteca. For me, that was always difficult with the altitude, the smog back in the day, the heat, playing at 2 p.m. and just, definitely some fans that are rooting against you.
Yeah, to say the least. Best up-and-coming U.S. player not currently on the U.S. national team. Men's national team, I should say.
Not on a U.S. player. I'd say Cobi Jones. He's about 6 years old, and he's on his way.
No pressure, though, right?
Yeah.
What is your...
No, to be honest, I don't know a lot of the younger players, to be quite honest. But watch out for Kai. He's going to be good.
All right. I'm waiting. I saw he was left-footed, right? I saw a video left-footed?
Yeah.
All right.
He's a lefty.
Okay. I'm going to be looking out for him. What is your favorite moment in soccer in a game that you played in?
The favorite moment.
Yep.
Again, geez, there's quite a few. I would say there's, winning my first MLS Cup, and Ruiz scored the game winner against New England. That was fantastic in 2002. And then I also got to say, surprise, in 2002, it was the final whistle when we beat Mexico, in the World Cup.
Awesome. Hardest.
And also, I'd also have to say, Rafa Marquez in that same game getting the red card, and he's still being okay to get up and still continue, because that really damaged their hopes of coming back.
Yeah. Awesome. Who is the hardest working player that you played with?
Hardest working player that I played with. Over the years, that's a bit of a difficult one. Yeah, it's funny. I think all the guys worked hard, that I know of. That always give like the extra effort. I know that, one player that stands out for me, that he would do a lot of extras, that would be, that people didn't realize, was like an Eric Ronaldo. Like he would do, he had all his issues and stuff off the field and different things, but in his day, he would put in the work when it came to soccer. He'd be doing the extra drills and, and the extra plays. And he could be a pain, on your team or against your team, but he did put in work, towards to be what he was.
That's awesome. And I think a lot of players, young players, but even professional players, don't understand that in order to get to the highest of where you are, you've got to put in those extra hours.
Yeah, well, let me tell a little story then for those that you can put this in anywhere you want about.
Go for it.
That I know about Eric Ronaldo. People forget that he was considered the best striker that the U.S. had ever had. And he was proving it, as he was one of the first ones to break into the Bundesliga. And when he went to the Bundesliga for that first year, for the first half of the season, he was the leading scorer. I mean, think about that. That's unheard of. People forget about this stuff. He was the leading scorer for the first year in the Bundesliga. For the first half of the year in the Bundesliga. Now, what I'm getting at is a lot of people think, oh, he's gifted, he's just naturally has that talent, or he's lucky. And these are the things that all people say about a lot of athletes where they don't understand. But I remember some of my buddies that I grew up with, and this was while I was still in high school, and this is when I had just got to college, and it was my first year, and Eric was down at San Diego State, and these guys, I came back like in the off season, and it was like December or something like that after season, and these guys had talked to their parents and my parents, and the parents kind of like relayed the story. My mom told me that they were surprised. My old teammates were surprised because they were at San Diego State too, and they said, "Hey, Mom," this is them talking, going, "Hey, Mom, this was weird." They're like, I saw Eric Ronaldo, and now, mind you, these guys played against Eric and everything, but they didn't go to college because they weren't good enough, or they got other things that kind of pulled them away. And they were like, yeah, I saw Eric, he was out on the soccer field, and there was no one else out there, and he was just dribbling the ball and shooting in the net. And he was out there for like about 30, 40 minutes by himself, just kicking the ball and shooting it into the net. And they were shocked that it wasn't the regular soccer training, that it was after season, that Eric was out there putting in extra time on his own to get to another level, and I laughed inside, because a lot of those guys didn't like Eric, and they would talk about him, and they would always go, oh, he's lucky. Oh, I don't know how he does this. But that was, I think, an eye-opener for them as they matured a little bit more to realize that people that are making it to the higher levels, they are putting in the work. You might not see it, and you might be surprised and wonder how they're doing it. But trust me, everyone, I've done it. Eric's done it. All these guys in different sports, the LeBrons, the Kobe Bryants, everything, we've all put in the extra work to get to where we were.
Yep. Got to have a deep, deep love in order to do that as well.
Yeah. Have you heard about that line from Kobe Bryant where he tells the reporter, The reporter's asking him about his work habits and, how he's so good and all this. And he just responds, have you seen LA at 4 a.m.? Basically letting him know that he gets up at 4 a.m. every day to work at his stuff, to be better than the other guy.
Mm. Wow. It's amazing. And with Winalda, I think the thing that struck me is that those people were saying he was there for 30 minutes. He wasn't there for 3 hours, so it takes extra work, but really 30 minutes of extra work can get you a lot further in life. It's the quality of what you're doing.
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot. I mean, that's one of the things that I would do after training. Right? As a winger, I work on my crossing, and I would take 10 minutes, and that's it. You can do a lot in 10 minutes. And this is just one of the things that I would do is like 10 minutes. I would go 5 minutes from the right side and just cross the ball for 5 minutes. You can get in, your leg can be hurting after 5 minutes of just, dribbling, making a move and crossing and putting in a quality cross. You could do like 20, 30, 40, 50, crosses. And then I do the same thing from the left side. And that's only like 10 minutes. But if you think about that, if you do that every day, if you're doing that, 5-6 days a week, all of a sudden you got an hour extra than the other person, 4 hours a month, and it adds up.
Absolutely. All right, back to the lightning round. I think we're getting away from the word lightning, but that's all right. We're flowing here.
Go ahead.
Best person to room with when you were on the U.S. men's national team?
Ernie Stewart, roomie.
Why is that?
Yeah, he was my roomie for years. We had a great time together. We had a good rapport. We were both the wingers together. I was playing the right, he was playing the left. I was playing the left, he was playing the right. And we were roommates together. We just had a good time laughing at the other guys, laughing at each other. Music in the room all the time. We were the room that everyone came to have a good laugh.
Nice, awesome. Who had the best hair of the '94 U.S. Men's World Cup team? Include yourself if you want to.
I did, of course. Come on.
Of course. I just set you up for easy
I was setting
question,
trends. Remember back there in '94, I was setting trends. Everyone's got like the dreads and hanging and trying to show how cool it is. But back then, not many people were rocking it.
That's right. Soccer aside, what would your dream job be?
Soccer aside, what would my dream job be? I'd say probably like an environmental lawyer. Along those lines. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to do. That was my plan.
Wow.
The game plan. Maybe go to law school and then do a few years of maybe like scripts, and then figure out what I was going to do from there.
Yeah. Wow. So what pulled you to want to do environmental law?
I always had a thing for like being outdoors and in nature, and I loved travel and going to different places. I love the environment, not as it's termed today to include anything and everything. But you have to remember, like back then, we're talking like in the 80s. This is before there was this, like environment is everything. Now this is way back when, where I wanted to. I thought that was a route that would be of interest to me, that kind of touched on everything that I thought was interesting. And I had a friend's dad was a lawyer for like Mobil Oil, actually, and he kind of said, noticing my interest, that might be a route that I'd want to go.
Wow. Amazing. That's awesome. Well, it's never too late, never too late. Now you're going to finish your degree at UCLA, you go to law school.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. 2 kids. No kids.
What's the best beach in Rio?
Barra de Tijuca.
That's
the one I like.
That's where my family is.
That was nice. What's that?
That's where my family lives. Baja.
Nice.
Yeah.
That was like back then. It was like a little bit more secluded than I'm sure it is now. So I love. That's where I lived for the second half of the part of the time that I was there.
Oh, awesome.
I was in Baja. But I like Leblon too. I mean, Copacabana, it's very, it's great. It's world renowned, very touristy. But, for me, I loved Leblon, and then living in Barra was nice.
Yeah. Awesome. So this one you can take more time. It's not part of the lightning round. What advice for parents who are raising athletes do you have?
I think I've said it, multiple times, and it seems like an old cliche, but make sure that they're having fun and that they're learning. That's important, that they're learning within the game, not just playing it, but they're learning about the game. If they have a joy for playing whatever sport it is and they're learning within it, that joy only increases. It's when they don't know what's going on and things start to become confusing that I see that kids tend to kind of drop off their interest.
Awesome. Well, Cobi, I know you're super busy. I really appreciate your time today. Your words have been really, really impactful, and it's a pleasure to speak with you, and best wishes, whether you become the environmental lawyer that you dreamed of or anything else you have going on in your future. Best wishes.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So what were your biggest takeaways? Cobi had a very stable and loving family life. I was really struck by what he said regarding being on the best team. Now, I've coached individual soccer players who came to me to try and improve their technical ability with the idea that they wanted to make a better team that they were playing on. Now, there's one in particular that comes to mind that worked so hard and improved so much, but didn't make the team they wanted to, only to be completely distraught and almost give up soccer because of that. The improvement was overlooked completely, and this particular player felt that his sense of self-identity and importance was based on making the particular team. What also was overlooked was something that Cobi mentioned, that not being on the best team can teach players so much more than being on the best team. Players can learn how to lose, how to win, how to make your team better, how to make yourself better, and so many more lessons in life. They learn so much more about life, let alone sports, on a team that's not the best. Just take it from what Cobi Jones went through. His path wasn't the easiest. He didn't play on the best youth team, and he didn't play on a development academy team because they didn't have him back then. And he had to walk on at UCLA after not being recruited at all, and still ended up playing professionally and in 3 World Cups, and ended up being the most capped player ever for the U.S. men's national team. Now, it's definitely easy for parents to get wrapped up in what team their child is going to be on, and really easy to become fearful of what might happen to them if they're not on the quote-unquote best team. We can lose sight on the fact that there is still an abundance of opportunity for players to play in front of college coaches if that's the path that they want to take, or to play in intense and high-level games if that's what they want for their child. We can lose sight of the best way for children and even adults to learn, and that's to face adversity. Think about your life for a second. When did you learn the most? What experiences did you have that you learned the most from? Was it from the quote-unquote victories or quote-unquote failures, wins or losses, mistakes or success? Everything in life can be a lesson, but the best ones to learn from are the ones that came from a place of emotional distraught. We can choose to get caught up in the distraught and believe life is unfair, or that everyone has it out for us, or we can keep moving forward and know that we grow best with a mindset that we are limitless, and we owe it to our children to teach them to do the same. I hope you enjoyed this awesome interview with Cobi Jones, and I'd love to hear what you think about it. Please feel free to email me at gabe@aclearmind.com or reach out to me on social media. You can find those links on my website, and that is aclearmind.com. And you can also join our Clarity for Parents of Athletes group on Facebook. Just search and request to join the group, and I'll approve you. As always, thanks for listening. Much love to you and many blessings.